It's been 6 months since Hurricane Maria slammed into Puerto Rico, causing $100 billion in damage. According to FEMA, power and water has been restored in most communities, but challenges remain. One includes housing. FEMA says more than 128,000 homeowners and renters have been approved for assistance to rent a temporary place to live, and more than 6,900 families have received help through its Transitional Sheltering Assistance Program. More than 3,500 of those families are still being housed in hotels in Puerto Rico and across 37 states. I recently spoke to Liz Cruz and her daughter, 17-year-old Jadalis Morales Cruz. Their family is among them, having fled to New York after the Category 4 storm left them struggling to survive. I also spoke with Natasha Lycia Ora Bannan, Associate Counsel with Latino Justice, an organization working to help families like the Cruzes. Liz, let me start with you and with Jadalis. When the hurricane hit, what happened to your home?
Well, the water came through the home, so it was all a mess. It was very difficult. There was no power, there was no water, there was no food either. So it was a big problem.
Were you living in San Juan or in a smaller community?
No, my house was in Isabela. Isabela, Puerto Rico.
And how long was it before you had any help?
Wow, I think the help, like for food or something, it could be like after 3 weeks or 1 month.
Jadalis, what was that like?
It was like a disaster.
It was a disaster.
Yeah, it's like I said, like zombie apocalypse, some type of.
How did you, did you have water? Did you have food? How did you get by?
Well, the food, we had to do some long lines. That was like 3 hours for just taking a pack of 4 water bottles and like 4 packs of meals. So it was very difficult.
Did you have electricity? Were you able to generate electricity?
No.
So how long did you put up with this?
Well, until I got here.
And that was in December, so about 3 months.
December 7, yes.
And your situation, actually, before we do that, let me turn to Natasha and say, you know, this is horrifying. What's the situation like now in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, it's very much like the stories that you're hearing here of Liz and Jadalis. You know, what we've been told is really that things have been restored, that there's electricity throughout the island, that most of the basic services have been restored. But the moment you leave San Juan in the metropolitan area, you find that that's not the case. There's thousands and thousands of families that still have no electricity, that have no running water, that are still struggling for basic services like access to health care, access to dignified housing, that perhaps they have a tarp, but perhaps they don't. So every time it rains, their house becomes flooded. You know, 6 months later, and we're still talking about the most undignified conditions for people to live in.
What happened to your house? You said the water came in?
Yes, and so when the hurricane we got there, we had to hold the air condition and the windows because they weren't open and closing. It was very hard, the wind, and so all the floor was like 3 inches of water, and so everything was like you didn't have a roof, and it was raining in the house, but we did have the roof. But anyways, it went through the water.
And after 3 months, was your house dried out?
Well, we had to like clean it up. Open the doors and the windows and get the water out of there, and so a lot of things we lost because it was all wet.
But was there mold, and did that cause problems?
It did cause problems because it had fungus. So in the meantime, my kids were getting worse health situation like asthma, and so their asthma got a little bit worse just because it was a lot of fungus, and it wasn't too easy, and so I didn't have power. And the hospital, it wasn't a good place to go in the meantime.
So, Natasha, are you hearing lots of stories like that where people are living in conditions that are, in fact, not good for their health?
Yes, absolutely. Thousands. I mean, we know that over 1,000 people have died since the hurricane, despite the official numbers put out by the government of Puerto Rico.
Which I think the official number is 69, is that correct?
The official number has been about 69 for the last 4 months.
Right.
And yet we know through investigative journalism that it's somewhere over 1,000, and that people continue to struggle with access to basic health care services. I mean, conditions that existed before have only been exacerbated after the hurricane. These are, fortunately, really representative of so many stories that we've heard of people with, you know, either serious conditions that just intensified and gotten worse, or developed over time, whether it was skin rashes from exposure to contaminated water, digestive illnesses, serious conditions that exacerbated because there was no healthcare system that was adequately, you know, equipped or able to attend to them. And a lot of that has also been, you know, it wasn't just the hurricane that created that, right? There was an economic crisis and
yes.
deep austerity measures that have been imposed that cut healthcare services, that cut education, that cut basic government functions, that really exacerbated the humanitarian crisis that everyone has been reacting to for the last 6 months.
And in terms of what FEMA says that they have been able to do, or the government of Puerto Rico, I mean, they are painting a very different picture of conditions on the island.
Yeah, that's not necessarily representative of the realities of people that live there. I mean, if it was that way, you wouldn't have 300,000 people that left in the last 6 months to migrate simply to be able to live, right? That's a massive migration for an island that only had 3.5 million people to begin with, 300,000 people who are seeking dignified conditions, right? We know that FEMA has not been forthcoming, that they've actually been, quite honestly, the obstacle to relief throughout this process, right? Centralizing aid, refusing to distribute it, 62% of claims that have been denied, refusing to recognize what home ownership looks like in Puerto Rico, refusing to grant assistance so that people could stay in their homes, instead putting them on planes and paying for hotels and paying twice as much as what they could have given them to be able to repair their homes and stay in their island.
I think it's important to remind our viewers at this point that, of course, Puerto Ricans are American citizens.
Exactly.
And that you are Americans. So basically FEMA, you couldn't stay you felt you couldn't stay in Puerto Rico, that you had to leave, and you came here. FEMA helped you come here.
Well, the FEMA help, it was the only one is the hotel. I don't have no other help from them. I don't have there's no assistant that it could work with us. And we're a part, just like you said, we're citizens, so I don't really know where is the help.
And what is your situation now?
Well, right now, since I've been here like more than 3 months, like 4, the house that I used to live in Puerto Rico is a program, so it's called in Spanish Vivienda, and they give you only 3 months for permission to like get out of the house, and you could be here for a health situation, or it doesn't matter what situation you have. And so I went to the deadline, so they told me I gotta like give them the keys back, and so now I don't have a home back in Puerto Rico.
So you've lost your home in Puerto Rico?
Yes, just because I was looking for something for their health situation. And so FEMA, I got problems with the part that when they said they're going to pay the hotel, just because they gave you like 30 days, and then you gotta, maybe you could be extended, maybe not. So if you don't get extended, where do I have to go?
And so your situation with your family now is you have a deadline?
Yes, until April 20th.
So you can stay in the hotel
until April 20th.
Until April 20th. And after that, what will you do?
I don't know.
And this is a situation that a lot of people who have left Puerto Rico, those 300,000 that have left Puerto Rico, are finding themselves in.
Right, that's exactly right. Either FEMA refused to provide them for assistance to be able to repair their home. They've had to leave their home because it's not habitable. They may be facing foreclosure as well if there's no moratorium that the banks are abiding by. And so what you have is this tremendous housing crisis and these policies that are really pushing forced migration and displacement and leaving homes abandoned. And then the evacuees that are coming here are not finding the services that they were expecting.
Natasha Lycia and Liz, thanks so much.